Thank you. I will call the special meeting of council Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025, to order at 7 p.m. We'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the indigenous peoples of the Treaty 7 territory and the Ohlone Métis Government District 4. Respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nation Métis and Inuit First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continue to enrich our community. Changes to the agenda. Item 3.1. Minutes of April 15th, 2025, regular council meeting. Are there any edits? Okay. I guess we'll back up and get a motion on the agenda. Councilor Knight.
I'll motion to April 22nd.
Okay, on favor? Thank you. All right, can you add a motion on minutes?
Jeff.
Councilor Brennan.
I move the minutes of April 5 regular.
On favor? Motion carried. Item 4.1. We have a delegation today in 2024 audited financial statements and auditor presentation. Lorraine Walker and Morgan Doggett. Sorry if I hatched that last name. BDO Canada LLC. Anytime you're ready.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I think we will start with a high-level overview of the financial statements, as I assume that you have been given them to review prior to this meeting. Oh, Morgan, you got your screen shared already, so I'll try to cue you up as to when I need the page changed. So if you can go to the statement of financial position, please. I will stop after each statement to see if council has any questions. And then I will stop after the presentation of the financial statements as a whole to see if there's any questions. And then after that, we will move on to our audit findings report, which discusses our significant risks and how we audited them. And then we will have time for council to ask questions at that point. And then it is up to council if they want to go into an in-camera meeting without management after we're done the findings report. Does that sound good to everyone?
That sounds good, Lorraine. Can you just hold just 1 second? We're just trying to get the sound to work a little bit better.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll let you know when we're ready.
Absolutely.
Okay, we can't hear it all there. Lorraine, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, Lorraine, anytime you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so statement of financial position, which Morgan has up on the screen here. Cash and cash equivalents increased quite a lot. Most of this, when we get to the statement of cash flows, you will see is as a result of regular operations of the town. Trade and other receivables increased in the current year, and most of that was due to $1 million increase in grants receivable. So overall, your financial assets increased from 9.8 million to 12.3 million fiscal year over fiscal year. In the liabilities, deferred revenue increased as well because grants that are not utilized are deferred. And when we get to the adoption of new accounting policies, which is PS 3400 on revenues, you will see that we are adopting a new policy in regards to offsite levies. So the current year offsite levies have also been deferred. Long-term debt went down slightly, and that was due to scheduled repayments. There was a small new loan taken in the year. Net debt for the year had a significant decrease of just shy of $2 million. Non-financial assets, I just want to draw your attention to the large increase in prepaid expenditures and deposits of about $800,000. And that is due to the prepayment on the fire truck, which I believe, Morgan, was delivered in May. Is that correct? Or will be delivered in May?
Will be May of this year.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause there to see if there's any questions over the statement of financial position, otherwise known as your balance sheet. Okay. Hearing none, if we can go on to this statement of operations, please, Morgan. When you look at your revenues year over year, I'm looking at the actual amounts in the 2024 and 2023, not focusing on the budgeted amounts, but you'll see that revenues increased overall year over year by approximately $1 million. Your expenditures also went down in the year by about $400,000, resulting in an excess of revenues in the current year over expenditures of $1.1 million in comparison to a deficiency in the prior year of $230,000. Your overall excess of revenues over expenditures in the year, though, was 1.6 compared to 2.3. But in the prior year, if you take a look, you had contributed and donated assets, which come in as revenue of almost $1.1 million. So overall, your accumulated surplus increased in the current year by the $1.6 million. Any questions over your statement of operations? Okay. And go on to the statement of changes in net debt, please, Morgan. So the statement of changes in net debt ties back into the net debt number on your statement of financial position, and it just shows the movements in the net debt of the organization, which is effectively your financial assets less your liabilities. And so you'll see there was some acquisition of tangible capital assets. You had some amortization also on those assets, and the largest change was in that prepaid expense for the fire truck. Any questions over your changes in net debt? Okay. Statement of cash flows. This financial statement shows your inflows and outflows of cash. Most of your cash excess and increase was a result of operations. So it starts with your excess of revenues over your expenditures for the year, adds back any non-cash items like amortization, and then shows your changes in your net working capital. The capital transactions in the year consisted of a purchase of tangible capital assets of 904, and you had some proceeds on sale of some small tangible capital assets in the year. Financing transactions all related to the debt. You had some prepayments of debt, you had some repayments of debt, as well as some new proceeds, resulting in a net change or increase in your cash position in the current year of $2.1 million. the majority of which came from normal operations of the town. Okay. This schedule of changes in accumulated surplus again ties back into your statement on financial position and just shows the movements between the unrestricted and restricted surplus of the town, as well as the amount that is invested in capital assets. So overall, that increased by $1.6 million in the current year. I'm not going to go through the notes in a lot of detail because most of them are the same as the prior year. Your summary of significant accounting policies has not changed, but I just want to point out the new accounting policies that had to be adopted in the current year. The first thing is on P3 partnerships. We'll discuss this more in our findings report and our audit work thereon. But as at the year end, the town had not entered into any public-private partnership arrangements. So there was no changes to your financial statements as a result of P3 arrangements. The other large change was section 3400, which is on revenue. And effectively, this speaks to revenues with or without performance obligations. The largest change on your financial statements as a result of this adoption is going to be for us to look at your offsite levies. The current year adjustment into deferred revenue for offsite levies, Morgan, do you recall the exact amount?
Yeah, it was about 240K, but then there was some accrued interest. So I think about a total of 300K.
Mm-hmm. So in the past, so in the current year, all municipalities started to look at their offsite levies in Alberta, and as a result of this new accounting standard. So in the past, PS 3100 had always required any revenues with external obligations, so under the Municipal Government Act, should be considered to be deferred if the expenditures associated with those revenues had not been incurred yet. So one of those items is offsite levies. So in the current year, we have treated those offsite levies as deferred revenue. You will see when we get to our findings report that the cumulative total is in our summary of unadjusted differences. And we will work with management next year to make sure that if there's any more that needs to be deferred in the current year, that we make that adjustment in the 2025 financial statements. It is not material in the current year to go back. Some of the levies are very old. A lot have been already been utilized, but we will take a look at it in more detail in the next fiscal year. That's a lot to say. So I'm just going to pause there to see if there's any questions over that. And we're also going to cover that in the findings report. So you may want to wait until we're on that document to discuss further.
Councilor Dustin, you want to wait for the final document and ask questions?
Yeah, I could hold.
Okay.
So we're good?
Good to
All
know.
right. Okay. So then the rest of the notes, there really are no changes. They tie back, the balances on the rest of your notes tie back into the balances, excuse me, on your statement of financial state position and your statement of operations. And I just want to go to the very back on the budgeted data, note 19, and just so that show that the budgeted surplus for the year that was approved was at nil, but there was transfers to reserves, making the budgeted surplus that is shown on your statement of operations at $1.3 million. This is similar to the prior year. Note 20 talks about salaries and benefits in detail. Note 22 talks about commitments for lease agreements and rental of assets. Note 23 speaks to some contingencies in our legal confirmations, one being from a former employee. No amounts have been accrued for this as of yet because no amount can be properly measured at this point in time. if anything. So that is the financial statements at a very, very high level. And I'll pause now in case council has any questions for ourselves or for management.
Okay, Councilor Gustafson, question.
I do. Thanks, Lauren. I want to go back to the deferred revenue.
Okay.
And are we using, in the fiscal year 2024, are we using the updated rules, or are we waiting till we use that rule in fiscal year 2025?
No, for 2024, any levies that were incurred in the current year and not spent have been deferred.
Okay.
And so what we will look for in 2025 is to see if we should make a prior period adjustment to defer anything from the past.
Okay, so we're
It'll be a balance sheet reclassification. So right now it's sitting on that statement of financial position down in accumulated surplus, and
Yeah.
it'll move from there up into deferred revenue. And so it actually, when you think about, I actually like that presentation better. If I was a user of the financial statements, I clearly can see in the deferred revenue that that money is not available for you to just use for any purpose, that it is deferred because there's an external requirement to do so, and you have an obligation externally on how you can spend those monies. So to me, the way that most municipalities, almost all of them I can tell you, are moving to is to move it out of that accumulated surplus into deferred revenue. So I highly recommend, if there's any more to move in the subsequent fiscal year, that we move it retroactively so it shows as a prior period restatement.
And are we able to look at that right now, or do we have to wait to see if we need to move any more?
Yeah,
What
go
you're
ahead.
Maybe the question's for staff
Yeah.
and not for Lorraine.
Yeah.
You're asking if do we need to move any more over?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just wanted to.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Gustafson, we likely will be moving more, but we'll look at it more closely to ensure we're deferring the correct amount from our current offsite levies. Anything that is not considered deferred would likely be reallocated to another reserve. Just not an offsite levy reserve.
Okay.
For your purposes, your total offsite levies, the accumulated balance that was in accumulated surplus was not material for financial statement purposes.
And what's the rule? Sorry for the material.
It's based on our materiality, which I'll get to when we get to the findings report.
Yep,
but for
right.
our purposes. But if we are going to defer any more instead of just going forward, then I would like to do, if council is good with that and management is good with that, I would suggest we do it as a prior period adjustment so that the comparatives are more meaningful.
Makes sense. Yeah. And sorry, one last question. Why were we doing this before? Is it just because?
Yeah, so before there was a huge, so under the Municipal Governments Act, it actually states that offsite levies have to be looked at and to see if they are free flowing and that you've already spent the money to look after them. But in Alberta, the majority of municipalities were recognizing the revenue when those offsite levies were received, then restricting it internally in your accumulated surplus instead of just showing it as deferred revenue in the liability section. So when you look at a lot of the munis this year, you're going to see that they've made adjustments to the current and the prior year as a result of having to do a deep dive into their revenue recognition policies as a result of the adoption of PS 3400.
Yeah, and I can see it, how it could get, it could get really lost in, a restricted account and not, you know what I'm saying, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It makes way more sense to have it up in deferred revenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Looks like we're good.
Okay. So the findings report, please, Morgan. If you can go down to, I believe it's slide 4. So audit at a glance. When we presented our planning, our preliminary materiality on the financial statements as a whole and the statement of operations is 445,000. We have a specific materiality against accumulated surplus of $2.7 million. We are not aware of any fraud affecting the municipality. If anyone on council is aware of anything, I would appreciate that we go in camera after this presentation and have a discussion. I just want to confirm that we complied with relevant ethical requirements and we are not aware of any relationships between ourselves, BDO, and the town of Crossfield that would cause us not to be independent. Next slide, please. Status of the audit. So we are substantially complete our audit. We will have to do subsequent event review up to the date of council approval, which I understand will be tonight, this evening. Then we will have to make sure that there's no subsequent events that have to be disclosed. We're not aware of any at this point in time. We will also have to get management representation letters signed by management. So Morgan, if you want to go through our significant audit findings.
Perfect. Okay, so this is kind of similar to what you would have seen in our planning report, but our first financial statement area would be revenue recognition. So there is an inherent risk related to revenue recognition and ensuring it's recorded in the correct period, as there may be bias to either overstate revenue or also potentially understate revenue to avoid repayments. So during the year, the town reported 11.5 million of revenue, and this represents services that have been performed and are reasonably assured exists regarding their measurement, collectability, and the consideration received. We did conduct audit testing over revenues to ensure the revenue recognition criteria was properly met and no issues were noted. Our next one is management override of controls. So again, this is an inherent risk in all entities, not just the town. So I want to make sure that that's clear. Management is in a unique position to override or circumvent the controls in place. So in order to address that, we have conducted journal entry testings. We reviewed significant estimates to make sure that there was no management biases. We reviewed council minutes and made sure that there is no financial impact from council discussions. And we did incorporate an element of unpredictability. A few others, deferred revenue, which kind of circles back to the revenue as we were just discussing, but on the other side on the balance sheet. So there is a risk that deferred revenue does not align with the funding agreements and revenue recognized and or deferred has not been valued correctly, resulting in a misstatement. So we did perform testing over the grant additions and also the expenditures, making sure that all expenditures align with the stipulations outlined in the grants. We do have another one quickly over the adoption of 3400. So this is just wanted to highlight that there was a new standard and it is a change between how previously it might have been recognized, but now it's recognized based off of performance obligations. And this does create a risk that revenue has not been recorded correctly in accordance with this new standard. So on top of that, we did obtain management revenue recognition policy. Amber was able to provide us a position paper, and then we were able to make sure that all other revenues were in accordance with PSAS 3400. Outside of the levies that we identified, no other streams had a significant impact due to this adoption. And finally, public-private partnerships. So again, PS 3160 was adopted during the year. So to ensure that we had no P3s, we did inquire with management, and then we also were able to look online on the Alberta website. We corroborated there that the town has not been involved in any of the P3s, reviewed minutes, and from that we concluded that there are no P3s. Any questions?
Okay, so I'm not going to delve into 3400 anymore because we had a fairly robust discussion around it at the end of the financial statement discussion, and I don't have anything further to add on that. Internal control matters. If we had any significant deficiencies in internal controls, we would report on them in this report and discuss it right now with council. There are no significant deficiencies within the internal controls. Adjusted and unadjusted differences. There are some, there we go, unadjusted differences. Go back to that. That is the amount of offsite levies that we need to review in the subsequent year to see if any of them should be deferred. As of right now, we have said they're all subject to deferral until we know more. But they are not material, so we do not propose to adjust in the current year. We want to give management time to make sure that this is right and we move forward with it in the correct amount. Is there any objections by council in doing so?
No, doesn't look to be.
Thank you. These adjusting entries, it looks like there's a lot here, but remember that we start our audit before management has had an opportunity to close off the fiscal year. And all but one of these adjustments was provided by management. The only one that we made was the very first one to move what we knew in offsite levies for the current year to deferred revenue, but we also did that one in conjunction with management. The rest of them are normal cutoff journal entries from the time we start our audit planning until we start our final field work. Other required communications. So just bear with me for a moment while I go through these. Potential effect on the financial statements of any material risks and exposures, such as pending litigation that needs to be disclosed in the financial statements, but is not already disclosed. There are no other matters other than those that are in contingencies right now. Material uncertainties related to events and conditions that may cast significant doubt on your ability to continue as a going concern, nothing noted. Disagreements with management about matters that individually or in the aggregate could be significant, nothing was noted. Matters involving non-compliance with laws or regulations, none. Significant related party transactions not in the normal course of operations, nothing. Management consultation with other accountants about significant auditing or accounting matters, none. Other matters, this again just points out the historical recognition of offsite levies. The next few slides I've presented several times to this council, and they just speak to our firm's quality control standards, our proprietary audit software being APT, and our online portal. There's also some slides in there that will provide you with some inputs and guidance on changes to public sector accounting standards and what's going on in ESG reporting on a basis with public sector accounting standards. There still is no requirement for public sector entities to report their ESG. However, sometimes when it comes to grants, etc., you may have to do some reporting for those purposes. And that ESG insights will give you some guidance on that. In the appendices is our independent auditors report, which will be a clean audit report with no reservations. Then we will get management to sign the representation letter here. The only changes in this representation letter are over the adoption of PS 3400 and levies. And then there should be a copy of our independence letter in here. And it just specifically states that we are independent of the town. Any questions?
Looks like you're in the clear.
Okay. So I don't know if council is in a position right now to make a recommendation to approve the audited financial statements. But if they are, then we can meet with management after your council meeting tomorrow and finalize our issuance of your audit.
We're gonna be okay. Looks pretty good. Administration must have done a good job.
They did, and it, you know, it's a hard year when we have changes in accounting policies and auditing policies. And the next big one is going to be in the framework, which is coming out, where your financial statements are going to take on the look of financial statements of corporate entities. So that will be a big change.
Looking forward to it.
All right,
All right.
any more questions or any need to go in camera by council?
I don't think we need to go on camera.
We'd like to thank management for all their assistance in the audit. And we'll wrap this up as quickly as we can after council approval.
Really good. Thanks so much for all your hard work. I know it's not an easy task to take a deep dive into all of our financials to make sure that we're all doing the right thing. So it's always nice to have somebody come in and double check and make sure we're all on the right path. Thank you.
All right, we will log off and let council get back to their business at hand. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Council, any discussion? Discussion? Like to make this.
Through the chair,
Councilor Johnson.
I'll move to approve the fiscal year audited financial statements.
Okay, all in favor?
Uh,
Motion carried. Thank you. And
Motion to adjourn.
thank you.
they want something.